Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 4 Pixels. Coco is here with Ray and Keydane, and we are continuing Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations.
That's right.
Witness, do you have anything to say for yourself?
All right, that did it. He's broken.
Nick, I think it's still a little early for a victory pose.
He was literally
Huh?
posing.
Huh?
In a court of law.
Huh. It's so sad. No one has any conviction these days.
Conviction, you say?
Yesterday, we all decided unanimously that this man was Mask the Mask. And now we're calling him a murderer. You don't think we're being a tad fickle?
That's a good point.
No way, don't fall for that too, Your Honor.
You say that Luke Atme was the one who killed Kane Bullard. Then let me ask you this. Why would he do that?
An excellent point. Huh? Motive, Mr. Wright. Motive. Might you, my merry murderous motive, manifest?
Nick, he's getting a second wind. If he prepared an alibi and pinned his crime on Ron Delight, as you say, he must have had a very strong motive for murder.
The only one with any motive we've seen is Ron Delight. Isn't that right, detective?
Indeed. According to my own research, the boy's motive is clear.
Without a motive, it's nearly impossible to prove guilt in a murder case. Now then, maybe you can enlighten us to what the defendant's motives were.
Thank you, sir, old-timer. They're doing everything they can to make Ron look suspicious. Despite our lack of hard information, this may be our only chance. Grr, I'm getting angry now. I, Luke Atme, had no points of contact with the victim whatsoever. Kane Bullard decided to investigate Mask to Mask and simply mistook who he was. It was Mr. Bullard who wrote the blackmail letter and sent it to Ron Delight. It was again Mr. Bullard who harbored a grudge against Mr. Delight for his betrayal. Mr. Bullard's mistake is quite excusable. The defendant truly believes he is Mask to Mask. That is why Mr. Delight saw it fit to kill Kane Bullard. Truly a tragedy.
So the victim, Kane Bullard, blackmailed the defendant?
This is the blackmail letter found in the defendant's apartment. A handwriting test confirms that Mr. Bullard was indeed the one who wrote the letter. How accurate are those things, even?
They can be pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What?
Very well, Mr. Wright. Begin your cross-examination.
Swatty. And who in the world is going to prove that?
I will. After doing a thorough background check of Detective Atme and Kane Bullard, we were unable to find any links between them. It's on the report.
Perhaps they were connected through their work? They were both involved in security.
Nope.
Nope. That was one.
In any case, the only one with a motive was Mr. Delight. Kane Bullard decided to investigate Mask to Mask and simply mistook who he was. Mistook? That's right, mistook. From the Old Norse, mistaka, meaning to take in error.
Very Norse.
I mean, miste. It's not really a word we use in Danish a whole lot, but you know, it makes sense in saying it like that. That wasn't what I meant.
Just who did the victim mistake mask to mask to be?
Why, the answer is obvious. Ron Delight, of course. Boy, I'd like to wipe that smug look off this guy's face. Why would the victim mistake the defendant for mask to mask? Don't you already know that? Zvari, take a look at this newspaper.
Oh, that's the famous Tear of Emanon, a magnificent jewel.
That photo shows a magnificent detective as well, does it not? Furthermore, it also shows an ugly guard, namely the defendant.
The defendant?
The victim very clearly misread this article, and Zvari. He got the wrong impression. The impression that this ugly security guard was in fact mask to mask.
I see.
I also see that there's no punishment for ad hominem in a court case.
That was an unusually reasonable deduction. Aside from calling someone stupid.
And ugly.
Or yeah, ugly.
It was Mr. Bullet who wrote the blackmail letter and sent it to Ron Delight. You mean this blackmail letter right here? This one right here that I'm holding?
It says bring $50,000.
And the handwriting is, without a doubt, the victim's?
There's no mistake. We have an official report to prove it.
But I don't see an addressee on this letter anywhere.
An addressee?
This letter was discovered in Ron Delight's apartment, and Mr. Delight did show up at the designated place and time. The fact that there is no addressee is irrelevant.
I wonder.
What's up, Nick?
I just had a thought. What if that blackmail letter wasn't meant for Mr. Delight?
Whoa, do you have any evidence of that?
For some reason, I just can't shake the feeling that there's something not quite right about this blackmail letter. Well, everyone, are you quite satisfied? And it was again Mr. Bullard who harbored a grudge against Mr. Delight for his betrayal. What do you mean by that? Oh my, I was certain you were already aware. Zvari! KB Security has a lot of security info on all sorts of companies. And since I was the security team chief, I stole data from the company. Caden Bullard had yet to forgive young Mr. Delight, which is why he sent him that letter upon mistakenly believing he was the thief. That's kind of a stretch.
Here's a file that we discovered in Mr. Bullard's office. Evidence that Mr. Bullard was receiving money through blackmail.
However, isn't that a bit odd? Why did the defendant pay Mr. Bullard the money? Even though he wasn't actually mask to mask.
On that point, there was an unfortunate bit of chance. Mr. Bullard's mistake is quite excusable. The defendant truly believes he is mask to mask. Do you really think that story's gonna hold up? That assertion is not merely my own, I'm afraid. What do you mean?
I have a memo from Ron Delight's wife, Desiree Delight.
Ronnie thinks he's mask to mask. Don't you feel sorry for him? Please don't think too badly of him.
Oh, Mr. Godot is good at impressions.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Trite,
Was he trying to act like Mr. Light just now?
His voice was way too high.
Yeah. How's that physically possible?
I thought he was actually pretty convincing.
That is why Mr. Delight thought fit to kill Kane Bullard. Truly a tragedy. Now that's just your imagination talking. Come now, Sir Lawyer. I'm afraid imagination isn't the right word for it. This is a deduction, the result of carefully applied reasoning.
Can we hear that careful reasoning for ourselves?
No. It's a long story and better saved for another time.
Very well, another time.
Those so-called long stories aren't usually all that long. At least not in my experience.
So you're going to try to connect Detective Atney to Mr. Bullard, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully it won't require surgery either.
In that case, you'll have to talk about the blackmail.
That's true. Was that blackmail letter really intended for Ron?
Since we don't have enough information, you should press him for more testimony.
Maybe I'll be able to shake some contradictions loose that way. I look at me at no points of contact with the victim whatsoever. Okay, well, it was Mr. Bullard who wrote the blackmail letter and sent it to Ron Delight. Habba-dabba-dabba-dab. Mind if I ask you a few questions, Detective Atney? Well, if it's just a few, I guess it's alright. When you said that this letter was addressed to Ron Delight, I couldn't help but notice one major contradiction. Contradiction?
I don't know where a walking contradiction like you gets off saying things like that.
You're one to talk!
At times like these, men are made to express themselves with their fists. Come at me. Why don't you show us what you've got there, Junior?
In a court of law? Like...
Yes, in
Indeed,
a court
time
of
to man
law.
that, Mr. Wright. Put up or shut up.
Time to beat ass!
Show us the contradicting evidence and the content of the blackmail letter.
Presented with your manly fist. Take a good look at this newspaper clipping. It contains a picture of the Tear of Emanon, the stolen jewel.
What about it?
The problem is this jewel's color.
Color? I'm not much for discussing color myself.
I wonder why. According to the clipping, the color of the stolen jewel was blue. However, in the blackmail letter, a totally different jewel is mentioned. I'll take that red diamond you received the other day.
Red?
Which means the red diamond described in the blackmail letter is not the Tear of Emanon that Mask to Mask stole at all.
And your point is, Mr. Trite. So you're trying to say that this blackmail letter was intended for someone else. That is what you're trying to say, right, Trite?
That is what you're trying to say, right, Mr. Wright? Well, that's what you're trying to say, right, Nick?
Yes. This is who Kane Bullard was actually blackmailing!
What?
Naturally, it was you, Detective Atney. Do you have some sort of basis for that claim? You've been personally involved in every single Mask to Mask case. And in the last case, you recovered what was stolen and received a jewel as your reward.
A jewel?
Probably the one wrapped conspicuously around your finger.
Like, how dumb do you have to be?
That red diamond ring! Even after you received that letter! That is the red diamond referred to in the letter. Which means that Kane Bullard wrote that blackmail letter in order to blackmail you! Gah!
Order in the court. Order, I say.
It seems you've gone too far with your childish pranks, Mr. Trite.
I don't like the way you said that.
Kane Bullard blackmailing Luke at me. Are you for real?
Yes, I am.
Nick, come on, stand up to him.
Then answer me this. The blackmail letter contains the following passage. If you don't want your identity revealed to the world.
Yes, it certainly does.
Kane Bullard threatened to make Luke Atmey's identity public knowledge. An identity he wanted to keep a secret. So, just what was that identity?
Atmey killed Kane Bullard because he was afraid of his secret becoming known. What was the identity he wanted to keep secret?
This is what it all comes down to, Nick.
The identity that Luke Atmey wanted to so desperately keep secret was his identity as... Luke Atmey was a blackmailer!
Hey now, isn't that a little different from what you've been saying? You said that Kane Bullard was the one blackmailing Luke Atmey. Only one blackmailer can exist in the world. Are you saying that Atmey was blackmailing someone else on top of that?
Blackmailers can't be blackmailed, just like thieves can't be stolen from.
You have to admit, that does sound a little odd.
It's not odd, it's the only thing that makes any sense. Kane Bullard was blackmailing Luke Atmey. But Ron DeLite was also being blackmailed by a certain someone. So did you start to receive blackmail letters starting after this incident?
Yes, just a few days after the Tear of Emanon heist. After that, I started getting the plans in the mail. I received plans from some very kind person, incredibly detailed plans.
Detailed plans? In which case, that would have meant that Ron the Light was actually masked and masked.
That is what we are claiming. Someone else came up with these plans and had Mr. DeLite steal his targets for him. And that someone was none other than Luke Atmey!
Shh! Silence! Now I see, it's all becoming clear.
What is?
When you were in grade school, you received the same report card every year. Careless, with the tendency to jump to conclusions. Am I wrong? How did you... You say that I, Luke Atmey, was blackmailing Ron DeLite. In which case, I would naturally know all about his relation to Mask DeMask.
Well, yes.
Ron DeLite started receiving plans from his second crime onward, correct? Which means I learned of his identity when he committed that first crime.
Good point. You certainly couldn't have blackmailed him otherwise.
In that case, let's see some hot, bitter evidence. During the first crime, how did Luke Atmey know that Ron DeLite was Mask the Mask?
I think I see it.
See what?
When you were in grade school, you received the same report card every year. Gets into lots of mischief trying to be the center of attention.
What do you mean?
This newspaper clipping. It has a picture of you and Ron DeLite in his guard uniform. It seems that Mask DeMask didn't just disappear into thin air. He just took off his outfit and hid it in a bucket.
That sounds far too stupid to be true.
Correct. With tricks like that, he couldn't fool a baby, let alone an ace detective. Then that's when you figured it out, Mr. Atme. That's when you learned that under his mask, Mask to Mask was really Ron Delight. What the?
What? No, wasn't he supposed to be Master Mask?
Not only that, it looks like he wasn't even a detective.
I can't believe it. He was just a slimy blackmailer.
What a fraud trying to pass himself off as an ace detective. Why, you? How dare you expose me like that? Why, I mean, I've never blackmailed anyone in my life. I'm famous and proud ace detective, and also Mask to Mask. Why can't you understand that?
I'm afraid you are neither a proud thief nor an ace detective. You're a blackmailer and a murderer. That is your true identity!
How dare you even? You could never fall to such lonely deaths. I tried to do something yourselves with those big mouths, and you're sort of fools. I say none of you can compare to my genius. You're all jealous. So good is the kind. Commemorate me. The ace detective cannot handle blackmail, murder threats. I'll get away with it. It's enough to make one laugh.
It would seem we've finally gotten to the real answer. This man is insane. That was quite a performance by Mr. Atme. Bailiff, please prepare a cell for Mr. Atme.
The hammer that strikes too fast has no time to aim.
What do you mean? I'm already prepared to deliver my sentence.
Allow me to say one thing. I will be the one to judge.
You don't get much more in your face than that.
Real quick, you know what bothers me? It bothers me that the coffee in his cup is like, it's not like brown like coffee would be, it's like black tar, like
Yeah.
gray.
It appears that your claws weren't quite sharp enough, Mr. Trite.
Where do you...
It's true that you've proven a lot of things. Things like Luke Atme was a filthy blackmailer, and that he wasn't as Lordly Taylor the night of the murder.
That's right, that's why he's the one who killed Mr.
But there's still one thing you have yet to prove.
What's that?
Just because he wasn't at the warehouse doesn't mean he was at the murder scene. Therefore, if you can't prove that this pitiful excuse for a man was at KB security, then I don't see how a verdict can be delivered.
No way!
Order in the court. Well, Mr. Wright.
This is it. This is the final round. I've got to prove that Atme was at Mr. Bullard's office on that night.
But can you really prove that?
That's long enough, Mr. Trite. I want to hear your answer.
That night, Luke Atme was at KB security, and the defense...
Can't prove it. Oh,
I can't prove it.
just as I thought.
But, if we hear more of Detective Atme's testimony...
Unfortunately, that's as far as you go, Mr. Trite.
What do you mean?
I won't allow for any more testimony. That's what I mean.
What?
Have you forgotten? Luke Atme is here after we interrupted his own trial, and you have failed to prove that he committed the murder. I think it's time for this witness to return to his own trial, and face his guilty verdict as Mask the Mask.
No! Well now, Sir Lawyer, it seems that love wins out in the end after all. I am the ace detective as well as Mask to Mask. My verdict will verify that. Just as Ron Delights will verify that he is the true murderer. I declare that with the full force of my ace detectiveness.
Order in the court. That's enough deliberation over this witness.
I can't believe this. At this rate, Ron is...
Don't give up now, Nick. We still have tomorrow. We can look for even more evidence and...
By then, it'll be too late.
Huh? Why?
Double jeopardy. One of the basic rules of any court of law.
Double jeopardy? Should a defendant be tried and found innocent in court, that defendant cannot be tried again for the same crime. This is a fundamental rule of all courts. And it applies to this witness as much as it applies to anyone else.
Mr. Atme will be found guilty in a matter of minutes. Guilty as masked the mask, even though we just proved it couldn't possibly be him. Which means...
He will be innocent as far as the murder of Kane Bullard is concerned. No way. The fact that you were unable to prove Mr. Atme's guilt of that crime here means that he will never again be tried as Kane Bullard's murderer.
Yeah! Damn it. Now there's nothing I can possibly do to win. Even if Ron is proclaimed to be innocent, the real killer, Luke Atme, will go free.
You have cross-examined every statement the witness has made here today. And as long as there is no more testimony, I'm afraid I have to declare that there will be no further questioning of this witness. Are there any objections? Then I hereby end the cross-examination of Luke Atme.
Oh, I didn't know this person appeared here. Go for it, Ray. It's Francisca. It sounded like Francisca. Or Desiree. Either one of those two.
I think I see it, I say in my normal voice. Your Honor, when you were a child... When you were...
Oh, God!
Oh no!
Oh my! I forgot about this typo!
Oh no! How did they miss this? Oh no!
I see what they tried to do. They were probably saying when you were in grade school, and then it was like it took up too much space.
And then they corrected it so when you were a child.
And then they forgot to take out one of the words.
Oh no, that's a horrible typo. Oh,
Your Honor, when you were a child, this is what was on your report card every year. Has poor hearing and often makes mistakes as a result. How did you... Phoenix, raise your head up high. Have you forgotten what I used to tell you? A lawyer is someone who smiles no matter how bad it gets.
Oh wait, is it me? I don't know who it fucking is.
that voice, no way. Is it Mia?
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Long time no see, Phoenix.
I changed voices.
Mamma mia! This is the true power of the Kurine channeling technique. I know that it's really Maya who's standing before me. Right now, she's my mentor, Mia Fey.
Now, let's do this.
But there's nothing more we can do, Mia! Without any more testimony, I can't cross-examine.
Not yet. The testimony's not over yet. And so, we will end this episode right here. Thank you guys for joining us, and see you next time.
See ya!
At first the priest didn't understand. Then he realized with a jolt of anger what she meant. It was happening more and more often nowadays. The young men of France these days were spirited, uncontrolled ruffians. That's a pretty tame word to call someone who did that. A lady walking home by herself one night would be a prey to a few number of them. lust. One of the 7 deadly sins, the one that the priest personally despised the most. Furrowing his brow in sorrow, the priest laid a hand on her thigh.
You are safe now, child. God's house is a sanctuary for the faithful.
I don't think he'll protect me. He looked at her in confusion. You see, Father, I have sinned again. Right there among the pews, before the altar of God, she bowed her head. I'm sorry. Was she apologizing to him or to someone else? Her hair hid her face and her eyes, and the priest could make neither head nor tail of her. He suddenly realized that his hand was still on her thigh, and he hurriedly drew it away. I'm sorry. She repeated this phrase over and over. After a while, the priest got up.
Don't fret, child. You're not to blame. I will contact the local constable, but in the meantime, you are free to make yourself at home here.